in your House Committee on Elections last week. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're the chairman of that committee, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as I review the bill, it seems that both the Senate Bill 7 and House Bill 6 have identical captions. Is that correct?
Now they do. Yeah, now they do. After we did a committee substitute to 7, now it has the same caption.
So yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as I reviewed the committee substitute to Senate Bill 7, which was considered in the Elections Committee, it seems that the bill language itself is maybe not identical, but nearly identical to the current version of House Bill 6. Is that correct?
I'm under the impression of the same thing. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you believe they're identical. You chose a peculiar term in drafting this bill, and it's on page 1, line 12. Do you have a copy of the bill in front of you?
I do. Yes, sir.
And you talked about preserving the purity of the ballot box. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a quotation from the Texas Constitution. It'd be Article 6, Section 4.
Right. And are you aware of the history behind that provision of the Constitution?
I'm not.
Okay. Are you aware that references to, quote, purity of the ballot box used throughout this country's history has been a justification for states to disenfranchise groups they deem unfit to vote or somehow lacking?
I didn't know that. I thought it meant...
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Anchia.
Can you kindly direct our guests in the gallery to refrain from outbursts?
The chair will remind members, guests in the gallery to refrain from outbursts. This is your first warning. Please contain yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, so I wasn't aware of that. I guess I thought purity meaning not having fraud in it or something. And,
Okay. Are you aware of the 1972 Supreme Court case Dunn versus Blumenstein?
I'm not.
All right. In that case, they noted that statements, quote, related to the preservation of purity at the ballot box, while a formidable sounding state interest, cannot be used to justify any and all voting requirements that a state might think up. End quote. Did you run across this explanation when you specifically used that term?
No, not at all.
What was your motivation for using that term purity at the ballot box? Because that's a specific set of words that has a lot of meaning in state history.
Well,
what was your intention?
I'm going to answer for you. You know, you may have figured it out by now. I really like the state constitution, and I think as a legislative body, just as Congress should, they should be looking for their authority from their charter, from the thing that gives them power. And so when we're looking at what authorizes us, all right, the sovereign people of the state of Texas who delegated their authority through the Constitution, we then should look to the Constitution and say, what gives us authority to do anything on this issue? And that's the provision that does that, and so that would be why.
And do you know what the motivation was for that Texas Constitution? And you're referring specifically to the Texas Constitution of 1876, correct?
Yeah, our current Constitution, yes.
All right.
Did
you look at the history before using that word?
No. The only thing, if we were to have a discussion, maybe over some coffee or a drink, somebody I could go into the details of Article 1 really well. I've read the debates and the journals of the Convention of 1875 on that for that thing, but I'm not familiar with the one.
You may have missed it then.
Article 6.
And this would have been very obvious, I think, to anybody who looked at that language. And that provision was drafted specifically to disenfranchise black people, black voters, in fact, following the Civil War. Did you know that?
No, I'm sorry to hear that.
And are you familiar with white primaries?
We've heard and read of such things.
Have you
I'm glad
read about those?
It's a disgusting thing. Yes.
Did you realize that that purity of the ballot box language in the Texas Constitution gave rise to all white primaries?
No, I didn't.
And did you know that this purity at the ballot box justification was also used during the Jim Crow era to prevent black people from voting?
No, those are troubling things. I didn't know that was their
Did
reason.
you know that in states across the country that penal disenfranchisement schemes were put in place, including in Texas, as far back as 1845, to effectively lock African American people out of the political process? Are you aware of this history?
You know, I think we've said a few times that I wasn't aware of any kind of malicious intent in the use of that term.
Okay.
And the reason it was used is I looked at the Constitution because I believe our authority is derived from the people, and that's why.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Anchia.
given the importance of this subject to the voting rights of all Texans, I move that we extend time for all question period for the pendency of this debate.
Mr. Anchia, I cannot recognize you for that motion, but I can recognize you for the extension of time right now.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I therefore move that the gentleman's time be extended.
A third extension does require unanimous consent. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The gentleman's time is extended.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, because we have that history in place and the references in your bill that evoke some of that very dark history in our state, I wanted to ask you, I want to fast forward to the last decade. Are you aware that there have been multiple findings of intentional discrimination against African Americans and Latinos by the state legislature, found by 3 federal courts?
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but I believe you've said it. By the way, I'd be totally fine with an amendment to maybe strike the word purity and say integrity or something, if you want to offer that.
Okay. No, I was just curious, because I think language is important, and the language you chose to use in this bill might reflect on one's intent, because if you are a student of the Texas Constitution, as you said you were, I think that might be probative, and that's why I wanted to ask those questions. Because of the history that we just outlined, that you said you were generally aware of, you weren't exactly sure of the number of times, I will tell you that in the DC Circuit Court, in an El Paso court, and in a 3-judge panel composed of 2 Republican appointees and 1 Democratic appointees, there were findings of intentional discrimination against the Texas legislature, specifically against communities of color. So in light of that history, can you tell me or why you did not do a racial impacts analysis on how this legislation would affect people of color?
Well, Representative, you had asked if I was familiar with it. And when were those, by the way? Because I wasn't, and so...
I'm sorry. It was from 2010 to 2020, in the last decade.
Yeah. I'd like to pretend that I was younger than that. I really don't recall that, and so your question's based on in light of this.
Were you genuinely aware? Have you heard that
I wasn't
has
aware
been
of it, and so I couldn't be in light of that, and therefore do this, in spite of or something. And so I'm not aware of it, sir.
Okay. Well, given that history, did you ever give thought to how this legislation might impact African Americans? Did you ever give it thought?
Did I give it a thought? Yeah, and if I thought somehow that this was designed to have some animus against any people group, it wouldn't have been written that way. In fact, due to the number of this bill, I don't think our speaker would have allowed it to be done that way. I don't think we'd have as many people signed on to it. They wouldn't have done that. I don't think the members of the committee would have voted for it or supported it if it did that. So no, I didn't.
Well, it's difficult
it crossed my mind, but I didn't think it did it, and so.
So as a result, in an effort to make sure that there was, forget the intentional discrimination that occurred in Voting Rights Matters during just the last decade, did you worry that there might be a discriminatory effect, even if you thought there was no discriminatory intent? Because under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, we have a discriminatory effect standard. Did you ever look to see if there might be or solicit a third-party analysis or any third-party testimony about the racial impact of this bill?
You know, what I can tell you is in crafting it, there were things that people had proposed and brought us, and when I read those things, I thought, man, that I don't like that. That looks bad, and so we rejected it. Does that make sense?
Because you didn't like it.
No, because I'm thinking, no, these are bad things. These are things that I actually thought might have
And what does bad mean to you?
something that would have a disparate impact on somebody, something that could go, hey, you know, that I think that's wrong.
And how did you make that call?
Just kind of by your heart, kind of a gut feeling.
It was your gut feeling, right? It was, you know, you may not have known, but you just thought it was your gut feeling that, hey, that feels bad to me, and I don't want it to be in my bill, right? Is that what you're saying?
You know, from people that we talked with, there's lawyers.
Is that what you're saying? Like you said, it came from your gut, and you thought
begin,
there's some stuff that would be bad.
So here's how
right?
it begins.
Mr.
Anchia, if you allow me to answer the question, please.
Well, I'd
so
love
you
for
look
you to
at it and you
answer
go,
the
man, you know, I don't
question
like that.
that
I'm
is
going to go
being
talk to.
asked.
I'm going to go talk to.
And I'm going to say your words back.
And I'm going to go talk to other members about it because you're construing it. Let me finish. You see something, you go, man, you know, I'm not sure about that. That happens in this chamber all the time. And then we go and talk to people. Go, hey, I think maybe that's not good. You agree? And then other people say, yeah, and so that's why I wouldn't have come in.
And so to whom in the chamber did you discuss these things?
You know, members of the committee and friends and other people, yeah.
So you asked members of the committee if proposals might have a disparate impact on Latinos and African Americans. Is that what you're saying to the body?
No, not like that. What I'm saying is, you know, hey, I'm not sure about this. Is that bad? And you know, maybe they'd agree.
And what was their analysis when you asked them?
I'm not saying any of this is about some racial impact. What I'm saying is whether we thought, maybe, you know, I don't think that actually helps people.
But the question was specifically about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and not discriminatory effect, but intent, but rather discriminatory effect. So
I don't recall you mentioning.
I've allowed you to finish your
Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So I'm sorry.
I have allowed you to finish your answers. So if you can allow me to restate my question again.
Is it on the bill?
You said you were, for lack of a better term, deciding what would go in and not go in to the bill based on your gut feeling. And some things you did not put in the bill because of that gut feeling, or because, as you have said, you spoke to other members of the committee about those things. Did you ever think to ask for testimony in your committee on racial impact from this legislation?
Will you allow me to answer your question?
Yes. Okay. That is a very specific question. Did you ever do that?
All right. So you had phrased it, and I was talking about kind of going with gut feeling. I wasn't talking about impact on any kind of particular thing.
Well, that was the frame of the question.
Well, you keep bringing up the gut feeling thing, so I think I need to clarify it. What that means is, you know, I thought that wasn't good law or something.
What is good law here?
I think anything
what does that mean to
treats
you?
everybody
What is good
equally
law?
And make sure that watchers aren't excluded, that they're able to watch the process, to make sure that it's fair, that we don't have people that are receiving assistance being taken advantage of. You know,
but in making good law, it doesn't sound like you're including understanding what the impact is on African Americans or Latinos, right? Because you did not do that. Is that correct?
Did we have an impact study done? No. And I think I've answered that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Why did you not have one done? If you were trying to figure out what might constitute good or bad law, and you knew that rather than having a discriminatory intent, which you're telling us today this bill does not have, that it might have a discriminatory effect.
This bill is designed to protect all voters, and so I guess because I didn't think this was treating anyone differently, I wouldn't have thought there was a reason to study it, because it literally is about all.
Were you ever asked in committee by a member of the committee to do such a
Actually,
study?
Someone asked, had we performed one, and that question was done, and I answered it then that one wasn't done.
Okay, and did you think to do one after that request had been made?
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think that was necessary, because I believe that this bill is designed to protect all voters, every single one of them.
Because it was you thought that this bill was neutral, and you trusted that gut feeling. You trusted
Well,
how you felt
recall-
about the bill, right?
Recall that you'd asked, you were trying to pin me down on the gut feeling thing, and I told you that was about whether I like language or not. It wasn't about
I'm just restating
that.
your terms.
Yeah, but it wasn't about that in context. I was trying to reestablish context. So, in writing it, whether we think words are good or bad, must or shall, those kind of different things. Yeah. But no, this wasn't about.
Can you describe what types of voter fraud this is intended to stop, this bill? Because you said earlier that this is about protecting voters and sort of allowing people to watch polls. What fraud is it designed to stop?
Okay, yeah. Well, we're trying to maybe stop what we call ballot harvesting.
And what does that mean to you?
That means when someone's, compensated in order to go and harvest votes, meaning they're being paid. In fact, I prefer the word ballot trafficking more.
What do those terms mean to you? Walk me through how ballot trafficking works.
Okay, let's go to the section of the code that'll fit it for us. We're going to go to chapter 276 in our code.
Okay.
And so we're going to go to 276.014.
And what page is it in your bill?
I'll find it. Yeah. Here we go. So 276.014 is entitled Paid Vote Harvesting. And the purpose there is to, you can't have any benefit. So vote harvesting means a direct interaction with one or more voters in connection with an official ballot.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Mr. Speaker, would you recognize me for a motion to extend time?
Mr. Anchia, we do not extend time beyond 3 extensions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Anchia, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield for additional questions?
Would the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
The gentleman yields.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing us to continue this dialogue. Mr. Kane, I don't know, you probably don't know this, and if you can confirm it for me, my dad doesn't speak very good English because he's an immigrant. Did you know that?
I didn't know that about your father, sir.
Yep. Do you know how many people in Texas are speakers of a non-English language?
I'm unaware.
8.6 million. They need help when they vote. So do you know how, have you inquired how your bill will affect non-English speakers in Texas? The 8.6 million of them?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, chapter 64.
What page are you looking at?
Oh, I'm just going to the election code, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Chapter 64 of the election code speaks to assistance of voters, and a person that's eligible to receive assistance is, someone that needs help writing their ballot or reading it. And what this bill does for them is we want to make sure no one takes advantage of them.
Can you point to me where instruction is given, where in your bill instruction is given in a language other than English? Because you said this bill is designed to help those people. So where in your bill does it talk about non-English speakers and assisting those people?
Well, it doesn't speak to that, but what it does is ensures that, like in the oath of assistance provision of this bill.
What page are you talking about?
Let's look for it. Yeah, there we go. We're on page 10, but this section begins at the top of 9, so it's section 4.02. And in chapter 64.031 of the election code, I believe sets out those who qualify to receive assistance.
What line of your bill is that?
Okay. Of what?
What you're referring to. You said in your bill, and you directed me to page 10. What line are you referring to?
Yeah, we're going to be at section 4.02. So going below section 4.02, so that's page 9, line 25.
Page 9, line 25. Go on.
Yeah. Okay, so that's why we're amending this existing oath, you know, to make sure that people who are eligible for assistance, that no one pressures them or, you know, or maybe takes advantage of them. Someone that maybe is unable to properly or to read the ballot in the language that it's written in. Because under chapters...
And is that oath in a language other than English? Or is there a provision in your bill related to that?
No, but I'm not opposed to ensuring that the Secretary of State makes sure they write the oath in more than one language. That sounds like a good thing.
Do you have any data on how the provisions of your bill would impact non-English speaking voters?
Well, here's how I know it would impact voters. You know, so eligibility for assistance.
I'm specifically referring to non-English speaking voters. I think you're trying to answer a different question
well,
than what
hold
I'm
on.
asking.
This is about this. Listen. So, it's section 64.031 says a voter is eligible to receive assistance in marking the ballot, as provided this chapter, if the voter cannot prepare the ballot because of a physical disability that renders the voter unable to write or see, or an inability to read the language in which the ballot is written. Right?
My question related to data. Have you looked at any data on how your bill? I mean, have you solicited testimony? Have you asked for a study? Have you asked the Secretary of State for data? Because it's not specifically about the provision you're referring to, but how your bill would impact non-English speaking voters. Have you done any of the things that I just described?
No, sir. I didn't hear anybody during the testimony mention that. But you know, I don't think it's a bad idea that we ensure that the oath of assistance is in more than one language. I mean, this is a diverse state.
Okay. Now, your bill significantly increases the role of poll watchers at polling locations. Is that correct?
I don't think it significantly increases the role at all.
Does it? So it doesn't increase the role at all, in your opinion? It doesn't change existing law to.
Well, we change existing law
to give that poll worker more power.
That's correct. It does not at all.
Okay.
At all. Like, so chapter 33, by the way, is entitled observers, but it's all about watchers, actually. Observers is a federal law term for some reason, you know, but we're on watchers, and it doesn't.
And so under current law, an election judge has complete authority over poll watchers, correct?
Yeah, they've got the,
and under your
they're
bill,
the boss at the polling location.
They would no longer have that authority, correct?
No, I don't think it changes their authority or anything, really clarifying it, you know. For example, this bill makes sure that a watcher who's appointed and properly there, they can't just be removed for any other reason. But to clarify that, we've got some amendments today that we'd like to offer that make sure to clarify, you know.
Is that Representative Click? I'm sorry, I couldn't understand who you were referring to.
Oh, I've got an amendment as well.
You have an amendment.
That'll make sure to kind of clarify that'll clarify, you know, that they can obviously be removed for a violation of 276. We got one that wants to be very clear that, hey, you can call the police to have them removed for breaches of the peace. And by the way, they're not even allowed to communicate to a voter in the code. I don't know if you're aware of that. Watchers, it's illegal for them to even talk to a voter, you know? And we've got some that want to clarify, you know, that also means you can't harass them. So I agree to that.
Let me ask you, on page 5, line 18, where you discuss removal of the watcher from the polling place, you put limitations on the presiding judge's ability to remove the watcher on line 19, where you say that the judge may remove the watcher from a polling place only if the watcher engages in activity that would constitute an offense related to the conduct of the bill. So that changes the authority of the watcher vis-a-vis current law, does it not?
I think it's clarifying what the existing law is, but we also have, I've seen some amendments we're working on that would say, or of this code, you know, a violation of the code, to kind of really further clarify that. I think it's already their power.
But let's be clear about this. Mm-hmm. Under current law, the election judge that otherwise has the power of a state district judge, you're aware of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would have complete authority over the poll watcher to make sure that they could conduct the election. And here, you are placing a limitation and saying that the election judge can only remove a poll watcher under a very specific set of circumstances. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know,
So is that yeah, as in yes?
So the overarching goal of this bill is to...
Wait, just help me out. Did you say yeah, as in yes, at the beginning of your answer?
Yes, and it's
Okay.
because the overarching goal of this bill is to
Excellent.
instill the trust in the electoral system, and that's why we're ensuring that watchers can do what they were, appointed to do.
Thank you for your answers, Mr. Kane.
Thank you, sir.